Hello, everyone. Welcome to a Dynasty Rookies podcast today. Obviously, fantasy football here. We're focused on Dynasty League, and we are just focused on rookies today. Quick note, this list was made in conjunction with Mike Clay's top 80 rookies available on ESPN. However, we are not going through 80 rookies today. We are going through 35 because I would believe that after these 35 players, kind of go with who you like or who you expect to have a chance, simply because most of the guys past this point probably will never play meaningful snaps in the NFL. From that point forward, where anyone's guess where you should even be looking at undrafted rookies, we're going to have to wait on training camps and things like that. With that being said, some of the order has been changed. Some of the players obviously valued higher or lower. We'll get right into it. I do agree. At number one is Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I think the running back position is extremely volatile, as it is every year. I think that Edwards-Helaire has the best combination of opportunity and skill. However, I would not have ranked him as the best running back prospect coming out. That would actually be number three, J.K. Dobbins. I just think his opportunity, specifically for year one and probably year two, is not what Edwards-Helaire will be. At number two, I have Jerry Jeudy. I think Jerry Jeudy is the most complete receiver prospect to come out this year. I think he is one of the most complete receiver prospects in a very, very long time. If he had the same size as, say, a Julio Jones at 6'3", we would be talking about them as similar prospects. And that alone, to me, warrants drafting him as the number one wide receiver, definitely, and the number two overall player because of his position as well. It's going to last longer. Wide receivers, to me, get a little more value in Dynasty because they're going to last longer than their running back counterparts, as well as I think Jerry Jeudy on the Broncos is in a very, very good situation where he can grow with quarterback Drew Lock. J.K. Dobbins, as I've already mentioned, I think he was the best running back prospect coming out. He has the best combination of versatile skill set, not as much wear and tear on his body. That more or less applies to Jonathan Taylor. And therefore, I rank him third overall. This is a future pick. You're not going to see the dividends pay quite as early on Dobbins as you would with a Clyde Edwards-Helaire, even with a Jonathan Taylor, or even a DeAndre Swift, who is ranked at 6. But Dobbins, I think, has the future going for him that the rest of them do not. And especially if you were to see an injury to Mark Ingram, I think he'll make that known very, very quickly. Number 4, Jonathan Taylor. I think it's only a matter of time before he runs away with that job. I think Marlon Mack is a very good player. However, he's not an exceptional player. He's just very good. And especially considering contract being up at the end of this season, I could see Jonathan Taylor taking over not just lead back duties, but workhorse duties as early as next year. Exceptionally valuable player right there. Number 5, we have CeeDee Lamb. The only thing knocking CeeDee Lamb down would be his situational role in the Broncos. They've, Amari Cooper taking care of. Michael Gallup's there. There's a lot of mouths to feed in Dallas, and if that scares you away, I do not fault you for that. It'll be hard for him to consistently produce week in and week out as a number one wide receiver should. DeAndre Swift, I am worried about Kerryon Johnson. I think he's a very good player. But similar to Marlon Mack, he's just very good. He's not exceptional. However, DeAndre Swift is not as – I do not value him as highly as other people do. I think he's a very good player as well, but I do not think he's exceptional. I think that the 3 running backs ahead of him on this list, Edwards-Helaire, Dobbins, and Taylor, they are exceptional athletes. They are exceptional talents, whereas DeAndre Swift, again, I just think he's very, very good. He would have to have a pro style similar to an Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara is not necessarily the fastest guy. He's not the strongest guy, but he's very elusive and core strength balance. If DeAndre Swift can carve that out for him, he'll have a very successful career. If not, he'll just be very, very good. And quite literally, I'm going to stick with the Saints for my comparison. The difference between Kamara and Latavius Murray is that elusive trait, that the ability to avoid, massive hits and slip through tackles. I think that will separate DeAndre Swift, not necessarily his physical characteristics. And so I'm a little bullish on him. going into this year. Probably won't have him on, my multitude of dynasty teams. Justin Jefferson for the Vikings, love the talent, love the system, love the role. I think you're going to see from day one a very, very successful career for Justin Jefferson. Again, this is a pick now and for the future. Love Justin Jefferson's place. Love where you can get him in a dynasty draft. He'll probably end up on a bunch of my teams. Cam Akers for the Rams. You're banking that he will win the job, and I just don't know that will ever happen. I know they're going to love Darrell Henderson, that explosiveness. If you watched my redraft podcast, I spoke a lot about this as Cam Akers in that one as well. They love Darrell Henderson's elusiveness. Darrell Henderson is going to have enough carries to keep Akers probably consistently from being in the top tier of running backs, at least running back one. That does not mean he won't be serviceable, but that is something definitely to keep in mind. Henry Ruggs, fantastic situation for him. It's just this is PPR, or at least what I play is PPR, and that you have to see how they use him. If they're trying to use him on shallows and rack style catches, then maybe we can bump him up a little bit. If they're using him more in a Tyreek Hill-esque role, he doesn't have Patrick Mahomes throwing him the football. Derek Carr is serviceable, but he's not Pat Mahomes. And without that bazooka cannon, feeding him, I don't know how much that speed is really going to translate into fantasy production. It'll be very good for the Raiders, but I don't know about anything else. T. Higgins at 10. I really like T. Higgins. I really, really like T. Higgins. I like his situation. I think going to Cincinnati and growing with Joe Burrow will be very good for him. It's something that's going to take longer to pay off, similar to what I was talking with J.K. Dobbins. That's kind of why you knock him behind the Ruggs, specifically why you knock him behind Henry Ruggs. Henry Ruggs is going to produce from day one. But if you're picking at the end of, now we're getting to the wraparound portion of a dynasty draft, you probably have a pretty good team at this point. So you can afford a guy like Higgins or, Jalen Reagor, Michael Pittman, to flash forward to the next two. All of these guys I see taking a little bit of time to develop, but at the same time being able to produce down the road. Jalen Reagor, love the fit, love the team, love Carson Wentz throwing him the ball. I don't know. It's very an inconsistent passing attack. Michael Pittman is a physical specimen. My question becomes who's going to be the quarterback of the Colts long term, because it's not going to be Phillip Rivers. Who is he going to grow in conjunction with? Who is going to be his quarterback versus you have T. Higgins growing with Joe Burrow. You have Jalen Reagor growing with Carson Wentz. Michael Pittman doesn't have that same, 1-2 punch that can develop that chemistry. That's why I slot him slightly behind the two above him. However, I love that talent. It's a very good situation. Brandon Ayuk, apologize if I say that name incorrectly, but he landed in a good NFL system in San Francisco, but not a very productive fantasy wide receiver system. The talent is there. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and switch these two. As you'll see, if you look at my rankings in conjunction with Mike Clay's, you'll see that I'm much higher on Denzel Mims, and there's one very specific reason for that. He was brought in to develop in conjunction with Sam Darnold and be that number one target. That is valuable when you're looking at rookies. The design of the GM to bring in a receiver to develop in conjunction with a quarterback. Look at Jerry Jeudy. He's trying to develop in conjunction with Drew Lock. T. Higgins in conjunction with Joe Burrow. And then you have Denzel Mims in conjunction with Sam Darnold. Those developments, Laviska Shenault developing in conjunction with Gardner Minshew. These, pairs, something that you really want to look forward to. None of them necessarily are as gifted as, where A.J. Green developed with Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton was an above average to average quarterback, but A.J. Green was a stud. And yes, A.J. Green is more talented than most of the receivers that we're looking at on this list. However, their quarterbacks, you could argue, are more talented than Andy Dalton. I think, for example, you could say that Sam Darnold has that potential. You could definitely say Joe Burrow has that potential, and you could definitely say that Drew Lock has that potential. But it's a little bit of a ramble saying that Denzel Mims, because he was brought in to develop with Sam Darnold, I value that very highly. That's why I put, you watch me slot Ayuk lower, because the San Francisco offense just doesn't feed wide receivers. It's going to be difficult to carve out that role for fantasy purposes. NFL, great pickup. Mims, to keep talking about him just very quickly, he has the physical traits you want. He's a catch radius you want. He's a prototypical build for a number one wide receiver. That is why he's with Sam Darnold. And if he develops, I think we're into the territory now where we're talking if. That is where there's a clear break after 12. If he develops, it'll be good for you to have him on your team again. We could be talking, second round, in which case we're back to the beginning. You're not going to get instant production, but again, I expect him to be treated like a number one wide receiver. That's very valuable. Chenault is definitely talented. Do not get me wrong. There's too many mouths to feed in Jacksonville. That sounds, like an oxymoron, that Jacksonville's offense is not good enough to sustain multiple fantasy assets, and yet we're going to be asking to do that with DJ Chark also there, with D.D. Westbrook also there. I'm a big Keelan Cole fan as well. I think he's a good role player. You add Chenault to that mix, there's just too many mouths. So many mouths, you keep that in tow with they're probably going to want to feed Leonard Fournette at least for another year. There's too much. It's just too much. There's too many mouths to feed. He carries to 15 in these rankings because of his talent. A.J. Dillon, I think, is a fantastic running back. I think his skill set translates to a serviceable running back. He's never going to be exceptional, but he's very good. And there's a role for that. You notice how I'm talking glowingly about very good here, where I was giving it a knock for DeAndre Swift and not really Cam Akers. Cam Akers is more simply just his situation. Why is it a good thing here than up here? Because we're 10 picks later. If you're drafting rookies, 10 picks is a lot. A.J. Dillon, he can afford to be good. We're talking second-round pick at this point. Look at the guys he's going up against. Keyshawn Vaughn, who I love the guy's talent, but he may never see the field consistently. DeAndre Swift, you're drafting him not just to contribute, but you want him to pop. You look at who you would be missing out on around him. He's got to be good. Down here, we're just looking for somebody that I could play in a flex role for 1 to 2 weeks. That's a big difference. That's why I say A.J. Dillon, because he is that guy. He does have that floor. And if you utilize correctly, I really like the situation that he is in. KJ Hamler, I would have liked to have seen him in a better situation. There's going to be, he's going to be so far down the totem pole that, again, similar to Chenault, they're both very talented receivers. I just don't know that it's really, really going to matter. They're just too far down. Vaughn, great talent. If he ever gets the job, I really, really like Keyshawn Vaughn. I think he's underrated as a runner. I actually think he is, definitely like talent-wise, he's above Dillon. He's in the group with these guys up here. He's a minor step down. He's not a full step down like Dillon. He's just a minor step down. He does not belong, with A.J. Dillon and Zach Moss talent-wise. His situation leaves him there. Zach Moss, I think Keyshawn Vaughn is a better player. And I also, oddly enough, when I was saying Keyshawn Vaughn may never play, I like his situation almost as much as Zach Moss because, we got Devin Singletary. We got Josh Allen still in goal line carries. I just don't see it for Moss. Moss, you're banking on things happening, but that's kind of the point we're at. Claypool, to me, has an asterisk. I have him at 20. I like that value for him, and I would love to see him transition to a tight end. I would love to see him be, pseudo-converted and be, an example that I'm kind of going to throw out there is like Evan Ingram for the Giants. Evan Ingram is more or less, he is a wide receiver. He runs like a wide receiver. He catches like a wide receiver. He doesn't block like a tight end. That's Claypool to me. And there's extreme value if they convert him to a tight end and he gets that tight end eligibility in fantasy. That's huge. He he goes from being, wide receiver 40 to tight end, 15. Anytime you're in a 2 tight end league or, there's definitely upside there as a tight end. So that's why he is at 20. That is why he is up here. Devin Duvernay, again, we're talking talent. We're talking talent at this point. Keep him at 21. Then I have the two quarterbacks for this league, or excuse me, for this draft class. The basically 1-2 debate. Tank for Tua turned into Tank for Burrow, and then the Dolphins still got Tua and all of that. They're not quite as proven as some prospects have come out in recent years. But quite honestly, I love both their situations. Joe Burrow gets a year to develop with, Joe Mixon, A.J. Green, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins. That's a good supporting cast. And again, as I said with T. Higgins, up at 10, I like them developing together. Tua has a good situation to develop. Not great, but Devontae Parker, Preston Williams, those guys are pretty good. And with, their new offensive coordinator loving spread offenses, I think that plays to Tua's strengths. You also have to keep in mind the rushing ability of Tua. But there's injury risk baked in here. I would actually put Tua above Joe due to slight rushing ability. Both of these guys, Tua is not a scrambler by any means. Let's not get carried away there. But he is, more of a willing runner. Because Joe Burrow is also very athletic, but both of these guys, they're never going to be, Lamar Jackson. They're not even going to be Patrick Mahomes, but I could see them being somewhat often runners. Think Josh Allen running enough to make it worth your while. He's 40 to 50 yards, that 4 to 5 points, that's pretty valuable. Antonio Gibson, to me, completely depends on how creatively he is utilized. He is a Tariq Cohen-style player. We saw in 1 year with the Bears where Tariq Cohen was heavily utilized and was a fantasy asset. We saw last year that, kind of all that creativity seemed to magically disappear. If he's used creatively like Cohen was his rookie year, I like him. If he's used like Cohen was this past year, he's not going to be a fair fantasy asset. Darrington Evans, really, really liked his situation up until Derrick Henry signed his long-term extension. I still like him. I still think he's valuable. I still think he is a good kind of handcuff, but nothing more than that. Tyler Johnson, I'm banking on talent here. I'm banking on talent winning out. He is, I think he was underdrafted, and this is NFL terms. I think he should have gone higher. I'm hoping that wins out. Again, at this point, we're kind of throwing darts. We're talking Joshua Kelly. Not to be rude, but Joshua Kelly's range of outcomes is he could be the starter, he could be third string. That's where we're at. Justin Herbert, you don't know if he's going to start this year, and if he doesn't start this year, odds are not great that he's going to start in a calendar year. Not that these situations are similar or too dissimilar even, but one thing that you can kind of look at with Justin Herbert is a guy like Josh Rosen. People liked Josh Rosen coming out. I'm not going to say loved, but they liked him. I mean, he was the 10th overall pick. He got to start, and then he got traded. And then, for whatever reason, the Dolphins, this is getting into an NFL talk. Dolphins should have played him. Anyway, Justin Herbert could never play. That's kind of what I'm getting at. Again, I'm kind of just going to look at these guys and let you know. Gandy Golden. I think Gandy Golden is a pro-ready player. I think that will take some precedence here. Kemet or Colton Kmet, I don't know how to say his name. I apologize. But this is the tight end you want. If you have to draft a rookie tight end, this is the one you want. Troutman, he's more of a blocker in this. This is not a good year if you need a rookie tight end. You're waiting until next year. They're two very good prospects. Penn State specifically. Name is escaping me right now, but that's the prospect you want as tight end. Colin Johnson is huge. And that's kind of what you're banking on, that, he puts something together. And then I have Jalen Hurts here. I see him developing a Taysom Hill role, which is fun to watch in the NFL, but not great for fantasy. Realistically, once we get to Van Jefferson here at 30, you're throwing darts, guys. Your pick, you can pick who you want. Honestly, we're at the point now where if you have a creative team name for Jalen Hurts, go ahead and draft Jalen Hurts and use that as your excuse to name your team, because, from from 28 down, the odds are these guys are never going to help you win fantasy football games, even at the dynasty level, unless you were in super deep leagues. That's going to do it for this video. Going through, some quick rookie updates, how we see them in 2020. I actually have a dynasty draft going on here. By the time this video is posted, probably about a week. Hoping to get, Dobbins on the board. So as always, if you have questions about anything, leave comments down below. If you would like to see a full dynasty ranking for current players as well, if you're interested in starting up a dynasty and you think that would be helpful, just let me know and we can crank that out. As always, thank you guys.